Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Idea Wars, and I'm Socrates. And today I'd like to address a topic that really concerns me, but we're definitely not getting any coverage in the mainstream. And it really bugs me that people aren't calling a spade a spade. So that's what I want to show you. We're going to talk about Islam, the religion of rape, murder, death, and genocide, and apocalypse. So let's begin. First of all, they teach rape under Sharia, and they actually blame the victim for not wearing the appropriate attire. Then they immediately label them a whore. And in Muslim countries with Sharia, they stone them to death many times, honor kill them. But in Europe, there's been mass rape and sexual assault epidemics all throughout, everywhere they take in refugees and illegal migrants. And I think I'll let this guy sum it up. It seems like he does a pretty good job. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Attack on scores of women in Germany has one city in that country on edge. Over the weekend, thousands took to the streets of Cologne to protest a string of vicious sexual attacks by men who were reportedly of Arab and North African descent. Those attacks come as German leaders face mounting pressure to deal with the influx of migrants from the Middle East. George Thomas has the details.
Tensions are rising in Germany's fourth largest city. Protesters took to the streets of Cologne over the weekend, furious about a string of shocking sexual assaults.
I am here today because we're all very sad about the things that happened here.
The attacks happened during New Year's celebrations in Cologne's main square, when hundreds of young men, reportedly of Arab and North African origin, attacked scores of women.
More than 500 women have filed criminal complaints, 40% of them saying they were groped and molested by men.
You want that in America?
Cologne has been on edge since last Friday.
I fucking don't.
Reports surfaced that refugees who recently arrived in the country were among the suspected attackers.
Oh, imagine that.
Scores of women stood in front of this cathedral protesting sexual violence.
It is about making clear that we will not stop moving around freely and to protest against victim bashing and women being abused.
Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel is facing tremendous pressure after allowing more than 1 million refugees into the country in 2015. Over the weekend, some 2,000 anti-Muslim protesters also took to the streets, demanding that Germany closes its borders to refugees.
I'm saddened by the events of New Year's Eve, but it is not only about that incident. What is happening at the moment in Germany is concerning. I am worried. I do not have the feeling that this is still my country.
A counter-demonstration defending refugees took place simultaneously in another part of the city.
We're upset and angry as women of the sexual violence that happened here in Cologne on New Year's Eve, but we're even more upset and angry that there are racists that are using this for their racist propaganda, because sexual violence is a global issue.
Chancellor Merkel's popularity has dropped.
But mostly in Muslim countries.
The number of refugees coming into Germany, almost 3/4 of those polled in a recent
As a race issue. So calling a spade is racist.
Important issue for the government to deal with this year. Merkel announced a plan Saturday, making it easier to...
Look at that. They really look like they're fleeing from dire conditions, wearing all the designer clothes and all that. Fucking serious right now? We all know that they're economic migrants more than they are war refugees. So they can just fucking give up on that bullshit rhetoric. Here's a dude, Kraut and T, and he sums up that was 2 years ago in 2015, 2016, New Year's, those attacks. And he sums up what's been happening since then with the migrants. Let's take a look.
From your side against either me, Ney, Sandra, Griffiths, Lehman, and Swampthorpe. I mean, in the end, I also have some understanding for it. Let me show you something. This here is a Twitter account called XY Einzelfall. All it does is tweet out confirmed cases of migrant crime, then creates a dot and places that dot on a map of Germany. 7 months ago, this is what the map looked like. Well, this is what it looks like today. No, you're not looking at a colored out picture of Germany. This is a representation of migrant crime here over the course of the last year since the migrant and refugee crisis. Do you see that gray waved symbol? That's sexual assault in public baths. Yes, there have been so many sexual assaults in public baths by Muslim migrants here in Germany that they became their own criminal category. That child symbol you, for example, see here is the rape of a child. You will, by the way, find a lot of those, unfortunately, on this map. Here's a fair and honest assessment of our situation in Germany. We now actually have a rape culture in our country. I know the honey badgers will probably disagree with me on this, and it took me a long time to come to terms with that realization as well. But it is hard for me to reach any other conclusion when looking at the statistics and lists. Even pre-migrant and refugee crisis, crime statistics on rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse of children show that per population group, Muslim migrants commit more of these crimes. In our current state, facing the consequences of letting up to 2 million Muslims into our country unchecked, whilst building a protective curtain around them to shield them of any accountability, we have seen a massive increase through that of sexual violence perpetrated by Muslims. Whilst at the same time in our courts, those Muslim migrants who have committed these crimes got away without consequences. The year 2016 was enraging, saddening, depressing, and a source of much fury for me. The year 20...
There you have it. What more can be said? The facts are the facts. The numbers speak for themselves. If a religion teaches 1.7 billion people to rape and to honor kill and to blame the victims, you're going to get rape and murder and honor killings and victims. Here's how moderate Muslims feel about murder. I think rape has been the last nail in the coffin, and we can move on safely to murder.
They always can come with the same accusations. This speaker supports death penalty for homosexuals. This speaker.
This is in Europe, by the way. This is not in the Middle East. This is in Europe.
Supports death penalty for this crime or that he is homophobic, they subjugate women, etc., etc., etc. It's the same old stuff coming all the time.
But you do all those things.
And we always try to tell them.
You're not denying them.
I always try to tell them that, look, it's not that speaker that we're inviting who has these extreme radical views, as you say. These are general views that every Muslim actually has.
Yeah.
Every Muslim believes in these things.
Yeah.
Just because they're not telling you about it, or just because they're not out there in the media, doesn't mean they don't believe in them. So I will ask you, everyone in the room, how many of you are normal Muslims? You're not extremists, you're not radical, just normal Sunni Muslims. Please raise your hands.
Normal Sunni, because they murder Shia.
Everybody,
I'll get to that later.
SubhanAllah. Okay, take down your hands again. How many of you agree that men and women should sit separate? Please raise your hands. Everyone agree. Everyone agree. Brothers and sisters. SubhanAllah. So it's not just these radical sheikhs then. Allahu Akbar. Next question. How many of you agree that the punishments described in the Quran and the Sunnah, whether it is death, whether it is stoning for adultery, whatever it is, if it is from Allah
whatever it is
and His Messenger, that is the best punishment ever possible.
Whatever it is, if it's from their bullshit, it's the best punishment possible. So the rape, the murder, the honor killings is not only all taught, it's not denied, even though if you ask a lot of them, they'll deny it, but they have the right to lie as well. It's called taqiyya. They don't even deny it.
For humankind. And that is what we should apply in the world. Who agrees with that?
That is what they should apply in the world.
Allahu Akbar. Are you all
Fuck
radical
all
extremists?
y'all.
SubhanAllah. So
Are they all
all
extremists?
of you are saying that you are
No.
common Muslims. You all go to the different massages now.
And they're also taught jihad, global jihad. They're taught we're dogs and pigs. They call us kafir. Oh my God, dude. People need to wake up. Anyone defending this bullshit is a piece of shit, in my opinion. You defend rape and murder, you're a piece of shit, in my opinion. What more do we, like, I'll fucking talk to them. I'll bite my fucking tongue in a lot of ways. But once I realize they're beyond discussion, fuck those motherfuckers. Here's a little clip of exactly how moderate Muslims felt about 9/11.
Terrorize you. We're commanded to terrorize the disbelievers, and this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the
disbelievers. The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, "Torhibuna." This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah.
So you're commanded.
It's a terrorize them.
Terrorize.
Doesn't mean
anybody.
You define terrorism as going and killing an innocent civilian. That's what you're. I define terrorism as making them fearful so that they think twice.
By going and killing innocent civilians.
Kill your brother, or go onto your land and try to steal your resources.
It is that jihadist.
So, but he's telling the truth. They openly teach that. It is commanded. So when they try to pretend like they don't know why the fuck they're doing that, we know it's up.
Just going through their own city and
just take a look at what it's like in all the countries across Europe. Look how they treat the natural citizens of those countries.
There's a baby. That's the youngest crowd surfer ever. They're crowd surfing their own babies. But you see, this is what the globalists want. They want to frack into our cultures with these waves of immigrants. And as we can see in the first video, they don't want to assimilate. They have an aggressive mindset that they are going to take over Europe. So here we see police trying to man these crowds. Here's another video of more migrants trying to cross over police lines. These are violent people. Now, this is a serious issue that Americans need to realize.
Who would think you teach violence and all that bullshit and you get violence? Who would think that?
We aren't a landlocked country like many of these countries in Europe that are facing these problems. But look at what these migrants are doing to the citizens of these countries. The citizens that allow them to come in. The citizens that provide welfare for these people to survive. And this is how they get treated. They get beaten
imagine
up in
having
the streets,
inviting a guest into your home because you feel bad for them. And all they do is rape and murder. They beat your children.
This is
Muslims gang up on
after school.
non-Muslims.
Home from school, a European citizen.
They're taught that.
And two Muslim migrants find him, and they just decide they're going to beat the crap out of him, just relentlessly. And you can hear the guy filming, laughing about it. You know, he's not going to step in. It doesn't matter that this kid is getting his head kicked in. They're just going to laugh about it. But this is a young man.
Yeah, try that shit in America, motherfuckers.
Very tough society and chaos. He's never lived in civilized society, and he's jealous when he sees a white European who has any privilege at all, who doesn't understand chaos and oppression.
Who has privilege coming in and demanding bullshit?
Migrant camp in Germany.
That's real privilege.
Pick up a chair to defend herself, and then a guy comes and rips it out of her hand. Look at this. These people get brought into Germany a chance.
This is how they act. They're like animals, man. They don't understand civilization. If you look at IQ, you need like over, I forget what it is, over 90 or 100 to have a democracy, to be smart enough to understand democracy. And that shit don't happen in no Islamic countries, man. Look at this. Imagine somebody hitting your daughter like that or your girl. I'll fuck that fool up, dude. But how can she fight against dude way bigger than her, you know?
Look, Islamic culture in its orthodoxy.
Now I realize this site here, InfoWars, I don't give a fuck about that, but
you really don't
the footage is undeniable.
white French being beaten up by predominantly Muslim immigrant gangs. Violent crime can happen anywhere and to anyone, and for many reasons. But in parts of France, it has become especially dangerous to be white. This French report says almost 1 in 5 Frenchmen have been victims of insults or worse. A few cases have even gone to trial. This Frenchman named Max, he's been attacked more than...
The media won't cover this, though.
People are increasingly living in fear. They fear the imposition of Islamic law and the organized violence against any French person, including the police.
For all its generosity. And we just saw that. They said, down with the police, go to hell. They said, down with Britain, go to hell. Now, this is a report shot by...
You know, why are we helping these motherfuckers? If you invite somebody into your house and they go crazy like that, number one, you have the right to defend yourself. Castle laws, so you can blow that fucker away. And number two, if we know this is happening on a large scale, they should be taking these motherfuckers and dropping them off on the other side of the fucking ocean, and then we should police our fucking oceans and just start making the penalty for doing that shit, sinking those motherfucking boats. Bet money they fucking fear getting in them goddamn boats then. Bet money. Jesus fucking Christ. This was this New Year's Eve. You know, last New Year's Eve, it was rape. This year, maybe a little murder, you know, mix it up a little. The only reason that there wasn't rape was because in Germany and shit, they actually had to separate all the Muslims from everyone else. The police did. That's smart because they knew going to be another fucking rape epidemic if they don't. And guess what? They were called racist for separating them.
Well, it's 2017, and I hate to kick off the new year with a story like this, but 35 people have been killed and at least 40 wounded in an attack in a nightclub early Sunday morning around 1:15 a.m. in Istanbul, Turkey, as revelers were celebrating the new year. U.S. and Turkish officials have called it a terrorist attack, making it the first of 2017. The gunman shot a police officer who was guarding the front gate at the Reina nightclub. The governor said, quote, he entered the club and attacked innocent people who were there to celebrate the new year. It was a cruel, cold-blooded act. There haven't been any specific claims of responsibility. The fate of the attacker or attackers is still unclear as of this video. Witness.
Islam is the #1 hostage taker in the world. They take the most hostages. You know, there's one more thing they do, because you know you got to take them hostage before you kill them, or it doesn't make much sense, right?
So how do you feel about there's not too much confirmed knowledge on a lot that's going on with the crisis? It doesn't seem very transparent in Germany. Do you feel like the news is giving you the right numbers for refugees? Do you feel like that you have a lot of knowledge on what's going on right now?
Well, I pretty much know that I know nothing. If you look at the numbers they give you in the media, they vary from, I think, 500,000 to now 1.5 million. That would be in our country. If you look at the official numbers, how many people claimed asylum, it's under 500,000, which means there must be at least another 500,000 people in that country who did not claim asylum. So we're just somewhere floating within that system. So nobody really knows about how many refugees there are. And at the same time, I can tell one case I experienced personally. They told us 2 days before the refugees arrived that there would be refugees coming. And at the beginning, they talked about families from Syria and maximum 500 people. At the end, was mostly men, not from Syria.
Have you seen much assimilation with the refugees, assimilating into German culture, getting jobs, learning the language?
Well, getting jobs is a very interesting thing. Politicians like to say that we need to integrate them by giving them jobs. What they now created is even more over the last year, the so-called €1 jobs, which is pretty much just modern slavery. So you earn €1 an hour, you work a full-time job and make 160 euros a month, and the rest you need to live is paid by the government. So they created a bunch of new €1 jobs to put refugees in there. When you had 5 years ago, you hired a 16-year-old student for, let's say, carrying around the tires for a car coming from the storage to the place for 60 or 70 or 50. You just now hire a refugee for €1 an hour. You can do that all day long. Now, thanks to the refugee crisis, the government promised at the end of last year that they will do something and that they would actually deport people. Everybody is assuming that they would talk about refugees, but out of my experience with my fiance and of other people I heard in the area talking about it, it's actually just people who integrated to an extent here, and they just got their visa denied. And people don't realize they're not talking about refugees or so-called refugees. They're talking about people here who have their homes here, who have their families here.
Why do you think they're doing this? Why are they trying to kick out the people that are contributing to the German life, the German economy, and keeping the people that are a drain on it?
Well, there could be many reasons. One right now I would actually say one of the most obvious reasons that it's easier to deport the people who pay for it themselves. It's easier to deport those people, and it's more on a it fits more into the political correct agenda that they deport those people instead of the refugees or other immigrants, because there we have a lot of Boston Germans would get mad about that, like the so-called Antifa, so that certain people cannot get deported. And well, the government wants to do something because the elections are next year, so the population is feeling that they're doing something about the crisis, but this way would be too hard, so they just go in the easiest way that they could find, which means deporting somebody, but somebody who would actually do something for the country.
It's like all the European leaders are inept. They seem to be completely ineffective and representing them, and that's like grounds for impeachment and shit. I mean, don't they have to answer to their citizens? What the fuck? A few years ago, there was an attack in France on a newspaper called Charlie Hebdo, and all they did was have a few cartoons, and in the cartoons they depicted Mohammed. And because of that, 12 people were killed, 8 employees, a guest at the magazine, a maintenance worker, a police officer. After fleeing the building, the gunman encountered another police officer on the street and shoot him at point-blank range. Later in the day, the phrase "Jesus Charlie" begins trending on social media. Thousands of Parisians take to the street to hold a vigil for the, I don't understand that, Parisians. You can't even joke. It's like humor isn't even allowed. There is no satire. You cannot depict, you cannot joke. There's famous memes with Islamists holding up signs, behead those that insult Islam, just for insulting it. Now, fuck Islam, dog. They need to, ridicule is one of the best methods to point out bullshit that's ever been made. And there's no way anyone could ever police that or stop that. Too fucking bad. I wanted to show you some honor killings and how they do even their own family members. A lot of times they make the family members throw the first stones. They bury them up to their neck, and then fucking throw rocks at their heads and shit. It is really fucking awful. And sometimes they honor kill for almost no reason whatsoever. Here's I think this is actually quite common, but this is just the first one I found, just to show you an example of how even for not wearing a hijab, a head covering, they kill for it. And I hear a lot of supposed women say, "Oh, we're free to wear the hijab." Yeah, but you dumb bitch, you're not free to not wear it. That's not freedom. You're free to make the exact choice they fucking tell you to. So don't try to act like it's a goddamn choice, you dumb bitch. Yeah, or die. But that's not a real fucking choice.
In Toronto, and her father is facing a charge of murder. The family lives in Mississauga, Ontario, and the girl attended high school there. The CBC's Neil Cookville was at the school today and has this report.
In Canada?
Students here at Applewood Heights Secondary School were expecting to have a half day of classes today, but certainly not expecting to be dealing with the death of one of their friends and classmates, 16-year-old Aqsa Parvez. The girl, police say, was murdered, and police believe she was murdered by her father. Police say it was her father, 57-year-old Mohammed Parvez, that made the 911 call saying that he had killed the 16-year-old early yesterday morning. Now, police will not comment on a motive in this case, but friends of the teenage girl said she was not happy at home and that the possible motive may have been the fact that she did not want to conform to her family's religious beliefs and may not have wanted to wear the hijab as per her family's wishes.
She wanted to be her own person. She wanted to show who she really was. She wanted to show her own, like, her own beauty, but he wanted her as, like,
you're not free to not wear it though.
Wear Pakistani clothing, wearing the hijab and everything. She didn't want to do that. Her parents were really religious, so when they were really strict with religion, I heard. So when they found out that she wasn't dressing religiously, they got angry, I guess.
The girl's father.
You know what more needs to be fucking said about that? They also teach that it's permissible to rape young boys and girls. I don't understand. They throw homosexuals off buildings. Well, I think I do understand. I think it's because you're not allowed to be a bottom in Islam, but being a top is permissible. What the fuck, dude? So I guess they're in short supply of bottoms in the Muslim world. There are many cases of them chaining children up to bedposts and raping them, and sometimes until they die. I actually have an example. Let me just dig it up here. And that seems to be perfectly fine and permissible under their Sharia law. Oh, come on here. Apologize. Really? Okay, right here.
And the question that every service member has, decorated Green Beret, who is being involuntarily separated from the U.S. Army for beating an Afghan police commander he calls a brutal child rapist. Last week, we told you about the case of Captain Dan Quinn and Sergeant First Class Charles Martland. Quinn left the Army on his own, but Martland is being essentially kicked out. Today, CNN obtained a statement from Martland in which the soldier says he had a moral obligation to act.
Fuck yeah.
The statement provided originally to
that dude's a fucking hero.
Martland writes, quote, "Kicking me out of the Army is morally wrong, and the entire country knows it. The alleged rapist whom he confronted is a U.S.-backed Afghan police commander who had allegedly tied a young boy to a bed and raped him repeatedly for up to 2 weeks, according to the boy and his mother, as well as according to other police commanders. Captain Quinn was with Martland when they physically confronted the rapist to send him a message, they say. Sadly, it was not the first time the soldiers had heard of this kind of abuse in this village, but they say they had previously been told by higher-ups in the Army that it was an Afghan matter and that there was nothing they could do about it. However, the local Afghan government, the two soldiers say, was not willing to act."
Charles and I just felt compelled to step in and go around the government of Afghanistan and handle the situation ourselves.
In his statement obtained today, Martland says, quote, "The severity of the rapes and the lack of action by the Afghan government caused many of the locals to view our local police as worse than the Taliban." Both Martland and Quinn were relieved of their duties after the incident. Congressman Hunter has written to the Secretary of Defense, but without intervention by the Secretary of Defense or by the White House, Martland's 11 years of service, which include 2 Bronze Stars, having been earned.
They rape and kill young boys and girls, children, chain them to beds and rape them, sometimes till they die. It's very common. It's awful. They're monsters, yo. I have another clip about honor killings. I'm gonna drive these fucking nails in.
Mahmood is Banaz's Mahmood's older sister. She's been speaking to the BBC's Ben Gagan about life with their father. She explained how her sister Banaz suffered abuse by her first husband.
Last time I saw her, yeah, she did. She wasn't happy at all. She was very unhappy in the relationship. And, you know, she said that the only reason why she's done it is she's still in that relationship is because of my dad. She wanted to make my dad happy. she would have wanted to get out of it and just live a life. That's all she wanted. She didn't want, the world. She just wanted to get out of it, be a free person, be allowed to get out of the house when she wanted to.
You ain't gonna do that shit in Islam.
Be
Sometimes they get
attacked
honored
and
killed just for leaving their house without a man.
be told what to do.
I suppose your father and those members of your family of his generation felt that Banaz was bringing shame on them.
It's not shame. It's a life. That's all we want. It's nothing big to ask for. You come to this country, they expect you to stay the same way. You can't. You see a different world. You see an opportunity to be someone. You have to just stay at home all the time and be a housewife, marry to who they wanted to marry and do what they wanted to do. You want a life, you want education, you want to see the world. You're not allowed that.
Oh yeah, they're not allowed to. A lot of them aren't. They don't let women get educations.
Who might be living in a forced marriage or
There
living in
are
a family
famous
environment
cases where they've killed dozens of little girls for just wanting to learn.
There's a lot of youngsters out there that would like to get out of this.
There's a famous case of a young Muslim girl, and she was forced into a marriage, and when she fled, they killed her because she didn't want to marry some old ass dude. She's like 13 or 14, I think.
And have a life and not be stuck in this kind of thing. But they're frightened. To know is there's a lot of people that's out there that could help them. They just need to get out of that. They need to get their own life and not be, ruled.
What do you think was in the mind of your
Breaks my
father
fucking heart, man.
on the day that he was involved in the murder?
And it breaks my heart that a lot of Muslim women can come to the first world countries and claim that Muhammad was a fucking feminist and bullshit. She married a 6-year-old, fucked her when she was 9. Even there's a famous line where her name was Aisha, I believe, and even when she was a kid, she was like questioning Muhammad, saying, "Oh, it's amazing how you always get revelations from God that are exactly what you want, Muhammad." It's so hilarious because then he looks at it like, yeah, I'm the chosen one. But it's so funny because it's like a child calling an adult's bullshit, how he's just making up a bunch of bullshit. Violent piece of shit, man. I think I put the nail in that coffin pretty fucking good. I wanted to touch on exactly how the demographic breaks down of Islam and how they sort of view each other as well. I covered an attack in Istanbul, Turkey on New Year's, and more than likely, I don't know the deets on that, but more than likely they're Shia, because 10 to 15% of Muslims are Shia and the rest are Sunni. And what we think of as ISIS and all that bullshit is Sunni. And they are always trying to murder the Shia. And they say the number one victims of Islamic terrorism are the Shia or other Muslims, right? But, well, I wish they would just keep it within themselves and the dumbass idea could burn itself out. It's fucking death cult. I mean, they're allowed to lie, rape, murder, steal from infidels. Like, not even Satanism allows that bullshit, right? Like, I cannot even come up with the most ruthless sort of religion that I can even think of that even comes close to that. I think it's in India, and back in the day, they had these people called thuggies. It's where we get the word thug from. And these motherfuckers would strangle like people all the time and then take them to the altar of their god and then bleed them out because their god was all about blood and bullshit, like a blood god, right? Well, Islam ain't much fucking different than that. If you ever take a gander into their holy books and you realize how often it talks about crazy ass violence, and it's just bananas, dude. The Bible's pretty violent in the Old Testament, but the New Testament's pretty kosher, so to speak, especially in comparison to anything Islam has going for it, man. It is not a religion of peace. It is a religion of pieces, murder, genocide, and if it keeps spreading throughout the world, probably apocalypse. Here's what the Sunnis think about their Shias. ISIS believes that Shias are apostates, non-believers, and must die in order to forge a pure form of Islam. Baghdad, whether a person is a Shia or a Sunni Muslim in Iraq, can now be quite literally a matter of life and death. Yeah. And they do the same to Christians, atheists especially, homosexuals. You know, and when social justice warriors stick up for this religion, it's out of pure ignorance, because everything they stand for, this religion stands for the opposite. I'm tired of this bullshit. I'm tired of people not being able to call a spade a spade. If people want to call me a bigot because I can't stand bad ideas, then have at it. If you want to call me a racist because I hate Islam, even though it's a religion and not a race, fucking have at it, dog. But if you hear me out, I think anyone would agree that it is clear that this spade is a spade, and they are bullshit, and they are a murdering, psychopathic religion that should be wiped off the face of the earth, since they refuse to reform. It actually makes it nearly impossible to reform Islam, because they think that Muhammad was the last and final prophet, and there will never be a better example. Well, I, for one, call bullshit on that. So that about covers it. Thank you, everyone who listened. If you like what I had to say, please like, share, subscribe. Till next time, this is Socrates. Peace.